May I call this meeting to order, please? It's 1:30 on January 12, 2026. Johnny, can we have a roll call, please?
Yes. Do I have Hurt,
Yes.
Hildreth,
Here.
Bentley,
Here.
Amaji? Here.
Thank you. Are there any suggested changes to the minutes from the November 10, 2025 meeting?
No, just suggested
If
changes.
not, then the minutes stand as approved. We have two people for members forum.
Yes, we do.
Okay, when you come, you want to read the?
Yes, I will.
You need to read that first.
Members are welcome to speak during the designated member forum at Rossmore Walnut Creek, RWC, board and committee meetings, either in person or via Zoom. Speakers are limited to 2 minutes and must clearly state their full name and Rossmore address before beginning. If speaking on behalf of another member, a signed consent form is required. To speak, members must submit a member forum slip prior to the start of the forum. Instructions and slips are available at the meeting entrance, the RWC board office, and online. Please be advised that meetings are broadcast and recorded. By attending and participating, including during the open forum, attendees agree to and release RWC from all liability for their voice and or likeness being recorded and broadcast for any lawful purposes without compensation.
Thank you. Up first, Ray James.
Good afternoon.
Please take your seat at the end of the table. Give us your full name and Rossmore address.
We have a speaker system that picks up there.
Speak
That's
to the
why.
square. I can stop looking for it.
Yeah.
Good afternoon. My name is Ray James. I live at 1812 Stanley Dollar Drive, Unit 4B. I am on the board of Rossmore Advocates for Diversity, or RAD, and I'm joined here today with our co-chair, Cruz Zaraga. We are here to speak on item 6B on your agenda. RAD is in the midst of planning a one-day conference in May about the importance of diversity. We actually got the idea from RWC's marketing committee in its efforts to increase Rossmore property sales. We know that one of the most critical elements in promoting Rossmore is its diversity. It's not unusual for residents to be asked by friends and family, who lives in Rossmore? What are the advantages? Are there people of color? What makes it special? Our conference is designed to educate Rossmore residents on the benefits and value of diversity, how the benefits of Rossmore living can be promoted through simple word of mouth. Who best to advertise Rossmore than the residents who live here? RAD is seeking support for its efforts by having some or all of its room reservation costs for this one day waived. RAD already produces free of charge for all Rossmore residents such efforts as RAD Cares, a confidential forum to listen and assist residents with issues of harassment and discrimination due to race, sex, religion, or disability. Last year, RAD produced wealth gap simulations, which focused educating participants on identifying why the playing field isn't always level and being aware of what this means. This year, we have created community conversations and connections, which will allow a space for all residents to come, talk, and share about community issues in Rossmore in an open setting. Now, RAD's planned 2026 Diversity Vision Conference, hopefully this May, is designed to highlight one of Rossmore's top bonuses, community diversity, and why it's important.
That is time, I'm sorry.
I would like to say thank you, and I'm here to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you.
And next we have Tom, and if I mispronounce this, I'm sorry, Tom Debley.
Correct.
Thank you.
Give me a moment here. There we go. Yes, Tom Debley, 3324 Tarbican Drive, number 3C. I've spoken before to you after last meeting about the flag policy. I just wanted to make, since you have it on the agenda today again, I just wanted to make one point. I had urged that we just stick to the designated list of people who are in the executive orders that outline for whom a flag is raised. Optional people can be added. By sticking to that, I think we avoid the problem of people who are concerned about political issues because this would not discriminate against either side. I mean, whatever side you're on, you know, I might have somebody who I think I'd like to see the flag flown for, but because it's optional, I'm fine with that. So I just wanted to make that point.
Thank you, Tom. The chair does not have a report and there is no unfinished business, so let's move on to new business. One thing that the first agenda item is whether or not we need a policy regarding the lowering of the flag. Right now, we have the practice, which has been in place without interruption for many, many, many years, but no designated policy. But right now, the question to the committee is, do we think we actually need a policy? Any comments, any thoughts?
So staff report.
There isn't a staff report, but I did talk to Jeff, and just to give you the barest bones of background. We follow federal and state guidelines for the flag, and similar to what Tom was saying, and it really kind of keeps everything apolitical, right? Because it's following whatever the federal guidelines are, California follows those. And so just other things to think about if you were to do something different. You have to ask yourself, is it adding clarity or does it introduce new challenges, particularly around who would have the authority, like locally, to be making different judgment calls and how those decisions would be applied?
My understanding of the current practice, not policy, the current practice is whenever the President of the United States of America lowers the flag, we lower our flags. That is the practice in place.
But also you mentioned if we follow, if the state does it also.
Yeah.
So it could be something that happens statewide.
But would the state ever lower the American flag? I don't think the state lowers the.
They don't govern, they have no governance over the federal flag. That's the federal.
If they lowered their flag for whatever reason at the state capitol, half-mast because of something happened, would we follow that? Because you did mention we follow the state and federal.
And what I understand is only we don't have a state flag. They wouldn't lower the American flag. The state capitol, Newsom would not lower the American flag. So the practice, according to what I learned, was strictly, we do exactly what the President of the United States does.
I'd just like to comment that, first of all, this is a challenging issue because I think it would be difficult for anyone to be in the position, if it were a board member or possibly the board president, to have to make that call. But having said that, I'm interested in Mr. Debley's suggestion that there is a recognized official list of the kinds of positions that are appropriate for flag lowering. And he noted that there were optional things that could be added to that. So I'm not making a motion here, I'm just noting that there is an official list that we could choose to follow if we wanted to.
Do we know where that official list is and who you do?
I don't know, I know you do. We could find out. And
Okay.
I'm not making a motion, I'm just
No, I understand, Sue.
I'm pointing that out as an option.
Well, my question, when we say official, that means who is the official? What is the source of the official? Because state official, federal official, all sorts of
Yeah.
official.
And I know in the last, when we last discussed this, Mr. Debley had noted that he had been the person in charge of flag raising for UC Berkeley protocol, and that the federal government has a list of the types of positions that are eligible to be considered for lowering of the flag. And then there's also optional on the part of the president or whoever to make other selections. So I'm just noting that there is an official list of positions that we could say, okay, Rossmore will follow the official list. It's just, I'm just suggesting that, pointing that out, that there is a list that we can
Okay.
follow. I think.
So, go ahead.
I'm sorry. Are you saying that, I agree that we should try to find that list.
Mhm.
And then are you saying, maybe not opinionating, but are you saying that maybe we should check that list and create our own accepted list of conditions, or that we rely on that list?
I would say we would rely on whatever list the federal government or state government has established. Because I don't, particularly because I am not comfortable with trying to define any individual here in Rossmore to make a call on those things. But
I mean, the high level thing for me is, yes, I think we need a policy.
Yeah.
So,
How do we go about getting the list?
I think we could ask help from our attorney. We can, I want to say our attorney worked on this in another community, so we can probably get some information from him
And one
for
thing
the
we
next
want to do
meeting.
when we're looking for the list, hopefully there's one list, but if there's multiple lists, we need to be aware. So we have to see
I hope there's one.
who defines this particular list. And we have to know whether or not other organizations have defined lists too, so that we're making a policy that works for Rossmore.
Right.
Okay.
should we also inquire on how cities decide on their, like, are we gonna parallel cities or? Because I heard that we follow,
I would do the attorney, and let him propose.
Yeah.
And bring it back to the next meeting. Get some
We
time.
could, I mean, I know he just worked on something with Seal Beach, and we could share what a similar community did.
Good idea, good idea.
that's good.
Thank you. So this will be a discussion that we will have over time to determine whether to have a policy and what the policy would be based on. Okay, the next one is the overview and discussion of the workflow for the review of policies. And you'll see this material that we put out here about the idea of looking at the various policies, and all of you have copies of the policies. Anne, would you like to talk in greater detail about this?
I will talk about this as long as my voice falls out. Little after effect, little after effect, my voice isn't quite that. Okay, so the item is to talk about the workflow for review of all the policies related to facility use, clubs, and guest use. And so what we wanted to try to accomplish today, Mary, correct me if I'm wrong, is we want to really talk about the flow itself without getting too much into each of the policies. I started working with Leanne when she was the chair of this committee, gosh, over a year ago, to try to put some, like, how are we going to approach looking these things? And as everyone's aware, we did a lot of work with clubs, with reservations, but it's really a very interesting network of policies, and we needed to figure out what's the chicken and the egg, right? And so if you were to look at this workflow, I'm going to try to, oh, can you? Oh, it does, okay. I didn't know if I did it on my screen, if it would, okay, I'm trying to make little things on my screen go away so I can see what I'm doing. So if you were to take a look at this, there are 5 policies, 5 existing policies, which pretty much cover facilities, clubs, and guest use. And so the 5 policies, which are also attached to this agenda packet, are 302, which is RWC approved organizations. 304 per 1 is guest use. There's 304, which is community facilities use. And 304.2, process for approving new rules, and 305, allocation of space in trust facilities. And so what we thought made sense was starting with the policy that addressed RWC approved organizations, because most of the policies have to do with how those identified groups and authorized groups would use all the facilities. And what we noted over a year ago is there's some tightening up, defining that would be very helpful within that policy. And so that's why that is, the workflow on that one is the one that's most fleshed out, so I can go through that. Essentially, with RWC approved organizations, so it's in the blue on the spreadsheet that we put together here, and there are these 4 columns. And if you were to look at them, some of the things we're proposing to talk to are the definitions. So in the policy right now, they talk about clubs, and they talk about other than clubs, these other approved organizations, and we have a few, and they're, like Rossmore Fund is a really good example. And basically, if you're a club or some other approved organization, you have the rights and privileges of a club, that a club does, but yet we don't know how, particularly how these other organizations, are approved. And you'll see this somehow like where the board has, the board can approve this, but there's no process on how that happens. So that's a big one for that policy that we'd like to talk about. The next column has to do with resident requirements for club status. So if any of you are members of clubs, if any of you have been on the executive teams of clubs, you'll know that you have to submit to recreation, a roster, and we ask that no more than 20% are non-residents. And what's interesting with this is it's very difficult to track this. It really is. It's very difficult to verify. And so we want to talk about like what was the intent of that? Does that number mean anything? Are we really trying to measure, limit, whatever, use of our assets by non-residents? And is there a better way to measure that? And is that something you want to task staff with figuring out? How would we measure it? So then we can have like conversations about real use and real impact to our facilities. The next column talks about club activity. And again, these have to do with impact with our resources, which are in really high demand. So under club activity, the first box talks about should clubs be required in their application, like really define what their activity is. Because we want to make sure there's no duplication, and that's kind of implied in the policy, but it's not as clear. And kind of on that same tone, you have groups that will create subgroups, and what they do is they form a great community, and I really kind of understand that. You find people that have one thing in common, they want to do other activities together, but a lot of those subgroups sometimes duplicate what other clubs are doing. So should we be looking at that, managing that? Do we care, do we not? Because again, this all has to do with once you approve somebody as an approved organization, they have the rights and privileges to go and ask for room use. And particularly these smaller subgroups, they have a big impact to the Noveno service rooms, which we have more requests than we can accommodate in those. And then the club activity, even taking a look at certain types of clubs, and are those missions acceptable? Because right now it's really an open interpretation of what the clubs can do. And the example that's given here is can a group of residents that belong to an organization that exists outside create a friends of group, so then that outside organization can use our facilities at the club highly discounted rate.
Do you happen to know how many of those friends of there are?
No, I mean, I think as we actually get into talking about them, we would bring in the metrics of these things. We did a lot of, for those of you that follow the KPI committee, task force, there was lots of slicing and dicing. And as Kelsey was showing me stuff, I'd say, oh, I said, can you do so? You were tasking her, but I was too. So we gathered a lot of good information that we'll be able to bring back here, knowing that this was coming up. Then better define, and most of these just say better define, right? So better define approved club use of facilities. You have clubs, and so we see something happening where we have certain clubs that would say, well, if my membership was 50% non-residents, I'm only going to submit a roster with my resident members, and we're going to somehow get guest passes to everybody else to come in. So we've had some funny dynamics happen where you'll see that 100% of a club appear to be all resident, but the regular use, and we know this by the gate pass. And please understand, we're not spying on clubs, right? I mean, part of what we need to do is make sure the gate is as hard as can be, which is why public safety has asked us to clean up how gate passes are issued, and clubs should be doing it per event and no blanket lists that are there for the year, because that would mean a club member could come in every day of the year, truly. But we have seen is that there are some clubs which they really are comprised with well over 20% in order for their regular activity to occur. That may be entirely okay, right? Things have changed since these policies have been written. I think many of them haven't been touched for a decade or more. But I think there's really good conversation because it talks about the significance of the quality of life and the rich culture that is created in Rossmore by the clubs. So I think it's, this is a really great time to look at this and redefine things. Another one has to do with, can a club invite a non-Rossmore entity to hold a fundraiser? So what we're seeing is sometimes a club will say, oh, you know what? Our club will rent it on your behalf, and there might just be 1 or 2 club members there. That happens pretty regularly. And then really, how does the ratio of resident to non-resident attendees impact club use of smaller rooms? So these are, and this is a really important thing, because what we're finding is in Dollar, we're aware of some clubs, because mind you, in Dollar, you have real small rooms, right? So even though you need to have 20 residents to be a club, the no fee, no service rooms, they have some small capacities in there. Some of them are just dozens. Sometimes you'll have 6 people, like in Mulligan, and they gather just for like, you know, a little luncheon or just to play card games. And we love that. We want to see that happen. Do we care if they happen to be 1 resident and the rest non-members that are coming in to use that? And there are ways to monitor that if we think it's a thing. Again, we're not really sure how to approach that. So that's, I'm looking behind me, I can see Janet in my peripheral vision with the hand up.
I have a clarifying question. So, like what,
Stand up here so it goes to the speaker.
so,
Talk to the square.
sure. My question is, for instance, I belong to an American Mahjong group, right? That consistently gets kicked out of our room many times a year by an event that has a bunch of outside people coming. So my question is this the type of thing we want to look at and say, you can't have events that kick our regular people out of their rooms? Is this maybe part of the?
I think, in a way.
That's a question?
Well, I was saying, is that
Is that
something?
you asking, is that the intention? Is your clarifying question, is that the intention of this
Yeah,
process?
one of the intentions of looking at this.
I think
How
the,
disruptive some of these other things are to the regular groups.
I would say that the intention is so the example that you gave is a good example of, we have organizations, we have clubs, we have activities where often it's more non-resident than resident, and it's displacing resident use.
Right.
And so we want to, I mean, I'm not going to throw out a solution that's for this group to, you know, propose to the board, but what we want to do is, if that's of concern, is that something you want us to figure out how to analyze and bring back? So you have, and I think that's an important thing. We don't want to have a conversation based on
And I went ahead and read all of the policies, believe me.
I did.
I did.
Yeah.
And but the intent, from my understanding of reading them, is to protect residents for the primary use of the facilities here, to keep it, to make it possible for all residents here to have access to the rooms for their clubs. Then if there's space in addition to that, to allow clubs to have non-residents, but basically to protect the use of the facilities for residents. That was very clear.
Yeah.
Now, parts of that have to be changed now, because who is a resident now? In this, they speak exclusively, no, not exclusively, but pretty much entirely of members, not residents, which means that we've got people who are renting here who may be classified differently too. So that's one of the things we have to think about. But the way the policies come together right now is to protect Rossmore residents and the use of the facilities.
Yeah, so I mean, yeah, so they work as a whole body, but and what I want to do is just go through these generally,
Okay.
and we can agree, is this a good sequence? And then I think maybe follow up with a conversation on what other information, with like some data that we have, can we bring back to have a bit more informed conversation next month?
Let me add one thing.
Absolutely.
Some of the clubs here, the events rely on non-residents to make the function happen, like a lot of the dancing clubs. And bridge, I think too. If you didn't have non-residents participating, those clubs would not be as active as they are, which to some extent benefits residents, but it also makes them different from other clubs. And these are the kind of things, as we go through, we have to take into consideration. Okay.
So then there's a policy, this number 2, like in the sequence, we thought like guest usage. So you were talking about like the word member, guest, and because we have our RWC member versus a club member, whatever. So we would need, I think having like clear definitions would be very important. And also what's happening with certain clubs, they've made different categories of things, and we need to talk about, these are the only recognized, but really clarify what we call them. And understand what's the difference between a resident member, or I mean, a non-resident club member versus a non-resident guest.
Yeah.
Or it doesn't make a difference because it's a non-resident using our resource, right? So we need to figure some things out. And also, again, if you look on that one, it has one of the same kind of tasks where it says consider recommendation to measure usage of facilities. It would still be really nice to know, and we know by many clubs that data point. So we started putting that together already.
And let me ask.
Yeah.
A lot of this is going to, for the committee to work on this for everybody, is going to take a lot of assembling of data.
Yeah.
Is that going to be possible for the organization?
We're already a good ways there.
Okay, good.
A good ways there, because what we were doing, so we were trying to figure out how, we knew this conversation was gonna come back the beginning of the year. And as we were pulling, so some of the data that Kelsey started with was begun a year ago.
Okay.
And then she enhanced it. And then as she was enhancing it, we added some things that we knew would be important for this. So it shouldn't be that heavy a lift.
Okay.
And I think it's just really good information to have.
I just wanted to make sure that
Yeah.
we're not dumping a whole
I
mountain on you.
appreciate that. I think certainly by next month, we'll have a lot of it.
Just to note that a lot of the information that is gonna be used for these decisions is in the KPI task force
Right.
information. So I know many of you have come to those meetings to look at that, but there's a lot of that data in
Yeah.
there that we'll use here.
Because I think we protected the names. Did we protect the names of the clubs?
Yeah, the names aren't in there.
Yeah, we take the names out because we don't want to, we really don't make it, we don't want to make it seem like we're singling out anything. It's because it doesn't matter what your club is. We're really just looking at the use of members, of residents and non-residents. So then task number 3 would be looking at community facilities use and the process for approving new rules. Those were kind of going together because there's a lot of things in both of these which we're like, to really put a policy together, the lens should be, we need to make sure we're talking about our RWC governance policy versus administrative, because sometimes the administrative things could get constrained based on a change of budget, whatever. So for instance is, this is a very scandalous one, fraught with controversy. If you look at what we did after looking at the use and looking at the volume of use and saying that really, any club that had over 4, we needed to bring back to 4 uses per week per club. To put that in a policy probably wouldn't be prudent in case, let's say there were budget cuts and we had to cut the staffing that takes care of stuff. Well, might need to reduce that. But what if somehow we had a wave of staffing, like you could increase it? So that becomes more administrative where your management team is responsible for managing resources. We want to maximize the service delivery based on the resources we given, but that can be dynamic and we're always trying to figure out how to get, the best, more robust level of service out of the different widgets we have to work with. So as we look at the policies, we should kind of look at things like, well, that could change based on staff. Like there's a whole thing in there with the deadlines by which people could put in requests for history. As the policy is written, they have until the end of this month to give us history dates for this year. And what we found was we really needed to do that earlier, and we needed to do it in a sequence in order to make sure we took care of some of the, first was like, the religious holidays are really important because they do change from year to year. Taking care of some of the bigger clubs that have use of the event center. And then, so there was a kind of a complexity sequence. And we got everything done by October, which we got a lot of really great feedback about. Okay. So, and maybe the board wants to change that, but as we look at that, that's the lens we're asking the board to look at, like just to make sure we do something a little bit different to differentiate anything administrative. Then the allocation of space and trust facilities. Quite honestly, I haven't looked at this one in a long time. So it's kind of towards like the end of the stack. And then you'll see number 5. And number 5 has to do with discussing the concept of waivers to policies referenced in this review. We do receive requests about waiving fees, basically, there were different things that were being asked to waive as staff, and we don't have the authority to do that. And so sometimes groups will say, well, can you bring that to the board? And so we need a little bit of direction on that.
And to that point, as I read through the policies, the fact that you can waiver it is permitted, but it's not.
But there's no process
There's no
defined.
definition of what basis.
Yeah. So we kind of have that brought to our attention.
So, do we have any indication of what is the number of people that are non-members of the combination of all the clubs that have the 20% outside people in here? What's that number?
What's difficult is you don't know who's duplicate, who might be in duplicate clubs. But we are getting better at, so there's a few different things that.
You mean a non-member in a number of different clubs?
So I can tell you by
Not
club,
resident. Yeah,
how many are non-resident versus resident. And we have those that are listed on the roster, and then we have numbers from gateless that are submitting it the proper way. So that's another thing. There are some groups that still have these standing lists, which our public safety director has now stopped that practice at Securitas. So I think people just had, you have relationships with the same people. People in Securitas weren't quite understanding the difference. So this year, we've been messaging to the clubs that you have your roster. They're non-resident members, we can put them on an annual list, but anybody else, they have to go on specific event to event.
You're talking about an annual list to get in the gate though?
Yeah.
Okay, so.
And again, one of the biggest clubs, which has 50, half of them really non-residents, they had this standing list that we were not aware of, that just got deleted.
When they're put on the list, do they have to pay any money to the safety department for having a tag to get in, or is this
They don't
going?
get tags.
They don't get tags, they just come
It's
to
the
the
old
gate.
school list.
So the reason I
Can I
wanted,
just clarify that, if you don't mind, Ted, because a person or a club can sponsor a non-resident member to get an RFID tag.
I don't know how that
I don't,
happens.
of a club? See, that's the point I was getting to. I know that you do it as an individual,
You do it as an individual, not as your
not as a
club.
club.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So again,
but
we
you
have-
can do it as a club?
Well, no, maybe no. I've only done it as an individual.
So, yeah,
I knew you could do it as an
Okay.
individual.
So this is really an important, I'm glad you're bringing this up, because these are the things, this is what we can track, and these are things that we can't track. Some clubs have really figured it out. And what they've done is, so I think every manor gets 10 people they can put on their list, is that right?
Every person, no.
Is that every person?
I think it's each manor. I think you're
Yeah.
right.
Whichever it is, you may have 2 people that you're related to that you want to give that to, and then you may give that to your friends that can come in. So there's a bit of that going on, and that may be something that we just can't figure it out. Because that's just something that's a benefit that comes with.
Similar to the 10 free trips at the gym, and somebody comes by and say, if you're not using it for you, I have a son who would like to come and work at the gym.
Yeah.
It's kind of
Yeah.
the same idea.
But the other implication of that is if someone's using their personal allowance for RFD tags or guests, they then become responsible for that guest.
person, yeah.
So that, in a way, you could regulate that by making sure that person is that person. If they're not, I don't know a lot of police, but,
Yeah.
Let me add to, but is on
Can
the
I just
roster.
belabor this for a minute? I'm so sorry, Mary, but
No problem.
what I've encountered is that I, as an individual, have sponsored someone for an RFID tag on their car. They're not on my guest list. I'm sponsoring them for an RFID tag.
can we look into that?
And you
Yeah, I have to look.
pay $15 a year for that tag. So that's, I don't think those names are on my guest list. I think those names I sponsor, and I do that, I was doing that on behalf of a club.
They're tied into you.
Yeah, but I know,
They're tied in on your guest list. If you had Dwelling Live, you would see them on there. They're tied to you.
yeah, no, I understand, and that's fine, but nobody ever said to me that that reduces the amount that I could do on my personal guest list.
You only have 10.
Okay, well, okay, maybe I haven't gone over my limit,
Oh,
but
let
for
me check on
anybody else,
that.
I don't pay for my daughter or her friends. But I pay $15 for these
Yeah,
individuals.
let me check on that,
Okay,
because that's an interesting,
So-
It could be like from caregivers.
it could have been a carryover.
Back to the 20%, here's my big concern about this. I get it all, I mean, it's big. There's a lot of stuff we gotta look at. But the reason I was looking for a number of people of that 20% in all the different clubs that utilize it. I'm in a number of clubs. We do have no outside members in those clubs. We don't allow it. You have to live in Rossmore to participate in those clubs. So what I was looking at is if this is a large number of people from the outside, and we have to look at the budget every year of what it's gonna cost us to replace equipment, what's the wear and tear, all that stuff that we look at all the time. How much of that outside, that number of people, are we talking, if we're talking 200 people, it might not be a big deal, but if we're talking 2,000 people with all the clubs we have, that could be a big thing of that number of people coming in, utilizing the facilities, causing us to have to change our budget to be able to take care of the outside people who have no skin in the game and nothing that they pay for upkeep and the stuff that we pay for out of our coupon all the time. So that's the number, that's what I was trying to bring up is, I don't know what that number is.
So and I think when under guest usage, it addresses fees, and I think that's when we talk about that. I remember Susan had an interesting idea. Do you remember?
I have to think about it. I know I had one.
Yeah, and because it's one of those things where we have, so this is a really important thing for anyone tuning in. We're not, I don't want people to think that, oh, we're getting rid of clubs. It's not about that. It's really understanding, like, are there now different categories that have evolved where you have the 100%, they're all resident? If you have clubs that have this different category, I remember Susan, you came to me, you said, well, can't we have like a different fee
For the
tier?
clubs who have over 20% non-residents, could they have an
Like a different fee,
incrementally
yeah.
increased fee?
Fees,
If
right?
you wanted to even consider that.
Yeah, because I will tell you, trying to charge a person becomes then another administrative thing. How do you track them down? How do you charge it? But it really becomes about the use. So you're charging per use versus. But so there's many different ways to look at this, but I think the fees will come in with, as we talk about
So
304.
so when you're
101.
saying, so is this will the fees address, so if you have an event in a club, you have the club fee to attend this event. Almost every club has a guest fee on top. They're not saying you can't bring a guest. There are people who know people on the outside who want someone to come with them to whatever event, dance, concert, whatever it's gonna be. Nothing wrong with that. But almost every one of them has an increase in pay because you're bringing in guests. 20, 25, I don't know what it is, but I'm just tossing out. It's always a little bit of a higher number. If we find out that the 20% is a larger number, maybe that club will say it costs $20 to join this club, but because you're a non-member, you have to pay an additional $100 to be a part of that club because of what we are gonna have to deal with, because I don't wanna look back and I'm just tossing this out for future, something to consider, because if I'm gonna be looking at budget again, and we're looking at what the budget is gonna cost for taking care of things and stuff, because nothing's inexpensive
Yeah.
anymore. And we say, okay, that's gonna be $3 on everybody's coupon because of what we have to do here.
Yeah.
I am not gonna be a happy person having to say that with all of the people I represent saying, well, you know what? We're helping everybody in Walnut Creek and around the world who wants to come into this gorgeous, beautiful place, use our amenity, trash our stuff, and then we have to pay for it.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm being a little brutal, but I'm trying to make a point.
Okay, so
I'm
you
trying to
think
make
we're
a
gonna,
point.
You think we're gonna cover that when we talk about?
Yeah.
When we talk
Number
about
three.
guest, actually, number 2, in guest usage,
Oh,
that's the
number
one where
two.
it talks about fees. And again, I think it's gonna be very interesting, because hopefully we'll have more information just to, because we wanna, so knowing you have a problem isn't a problem, because then you can start the solution. So we wanna make sure we understand what the problem, and I don't wanna call it a problem too, because it adds richness to the experience of so many people. And I would say that the one thing that's really important as we go through this, it's very, I'm very sensitive to the administrative capacity of clubs. So what we don't want them to do is to have to monitor and figure out how to get like more fees to us. I said, however fees go down, we have to do it in a way where we actually, it's something that we can actually track and assess a fee to, which is why I really like Susan's thought, because you know, as soon as you put together a reservation, pretty much what the makeup of the attendees are gonna be. You know right there what it's gonna be. And also because they have to give us a guest list now, so per use. So once we know that, we'll be like, oh, so you're in this fee structure with this fee structure.
Let me ask for some clarification about how administratively things are done right now with regard to the rosters that are submitted,
Yeah.
okay? And also, how frequently are those updated? What's the requirement for updates? And how is the roster checked so that we know that if someone's listed as a member, they actually are a member?
You can't, so I would say, so we ask for things, to be quite honest. Okay, first of all, we at the beginning of every reservation cycle, we ask for an update. So every year, we ask for the roster to be updated.
Once a year.
Okay, so I will say that, yes, and after the audit where we were talking about the 20%, things, certain clubs magically became 100% resident, but like the lists now at the gate are like huge. It's been very funny. And we don't have, and again, we don't want people to feel they have to hide who's using, who they're having really enjoyable recreational time with. That's not the point of this. We're really trying to monitor the use so we can kind of create priorities if it's really too impactful, like for something which is all resident. But we look at that once a year. I will tell you that it's a little bit of a misleading administrative process because we have to, it's all an honor system. I think the most important thing, the most important documentation that we get was when somebody wants to be a new club and you have to have 20 people.
Right.
You've got to have the 20 people because a lot of times people can't get the 20 people for that initial club.
I got you.
So then after that, then you say, well, what is it that we can look at? And it's really how the reservations are being used. So that's why, like, looking at these policies and really what are we collecting, like what is the importance of non-members versus members? I think we're beyond that. I think really it's who's using it, period. Whether you're a member, whether you're a non-resident member or non-resident guest.
Well, my concern is when the roster comes in and it has the name and it says member, is there a reasonable way to verify that that person is a member? Is it checked against any official list? Or is it just a name?
They're giving us their official list. So, and for us to be able to go in and data entry, I guess combined, it's thousands of entries that we would need to.
In two of the clubs I'm in, the membership chair checks with membership records on the person to verify that they're a member of Rossmore. Because we do have a lot of leasees in here renting and stuff who don't pay the fluff fee. And they don't, so they will know. And that's how you can tell. And I know for a fact, there's been people who have turned away from those two clubs because they said, I'm a resident because I live here, but they're not a member of of Rossmore. And so and they've been denied entrance into those clubs because of that. And a couple of them have changed that when they go back and they say, oh, now I have to pay the fee to join this club. So then they pay the fee.
I think we need to add that to our list because that is very involved and requires labor.
I know it does, but I'm just saying, two of the clubs that I'm in, I know that they check that to make sure because it's limitation on both of those clubs I'm in, there's a limitation of how many bodies that can actually fit into the club. And if a lot of them are non-members of some kind.
Just a minute, Susan, let me ask
Oh,
you.
sure.
My issue here is that you know a club that checks it with member records. But we have 250 clubs. How many don't check it with member records to make sure that they're actually accurately reporting who's a member?
Oh, and one other thing, you just brought up a point.
Could I just add
Yeah.
that the roster that's submitted to recreation requires the addresses of all the members.
Of all the residents.
Residents.
No,
That's
It doesn't say-
everybody.
It doesn't tell, they have to require, that you give, it could be John Doe living at this, which is an address, but it's not saying that that person is a true member, and it doesn't say anything, there's no box to check for leasing, is there?
And it could be
So they could be a resident, or it could be a caregiver of somebody who
I
lives at that
understand that.
residence.
The question I was getting at was if you wanted to try to determine who had reported their address as a Rossmore address and who did not have a Rossmore address, you have that information. You're requiring us to give
We
you
know
that information.
non-resident,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, we know
So
non-resident
your
rosters for sure.
concern is the residents and who's the residents or the leasees.
No, I got a lot of concerns.
Yeah.
You know, on all of the non-resident stuff and all that thing, I really have a lot of concerns about that, only when I'm trying to control.
No, I
Money.
understand. I just wanted to make
So,
sure that everybody knows we are required to submit all addresses.
But I think, Ann, at the KPI meeting, you did mention something I wanted to follow up and I forgot. We keep throwing out a number of 230, 200, 250 clubs. You said something at the meeting that after you went through some of the clubs, you found out that some clubs were no longer in existence and some clubs didn't qualify as clubs. Do we have a real number of what, when we talk now, that we know what the club
It's
number is?
closer to 185. Yeah,
That's-
but we do,
I've heard
we do
that
have.
too.
Said 179.
It probably got reduced this
Okay,
year.
so
yeah.
179, I'm gonna put down.
That's a big change.
Yeah, and that's our real clubs now, right?
On this point of control, how much of control is, or how much of awareness is given to you in recreation or community services by Securitas when they notice an irregularity of people coming through the gate? How often are they a control point for that?
Not that often. So, because I will say that like with Securitas, they are serving us, right? And so there's different, and because there's this transition into dwelling life. So people can use QR codes, people can have RFID tags, people have lists. And even though we told them you need to kind of dump those old lists, sometimes they exist in places and certain residents that were club presidents, whatever, would be able to, they're just emailing people and it's taking a while for them to understand, like, you can't just get a list from residents and put them up there. So basically everything's being sent by Leticia right now for any of our stuff. Whether there are workarounds, I don't know, but Tom has been doing a really great job in cleaning it up. And so this year is really like the best it's been, like into this year. And the clubs have been good about it. I mean, you know, there aren't that many that had standing lists that have heartache over it. You know, they're understanding why we're making the change.
And then if I could, we kind of glossed over number 5,
Yes.
the waiver system.
Yes.
I would like to highlight that as, yes, we need a policy, because I think that casual waiver allowance in prior administrations is where we got into a
A lot
problem.
of trouble, yeah.
And so I really
Yeah.
do want a policy on that, personally.
I agree.
You know, I don't know if we're quite done with the discussion, but I wanted to, I hope that we can identify what our goal is with this review. Because my personal goal, and this is just my personal goal, is to make sure that we have as many facilities available for club use as possible. Because new clubs have a hard time getting reservations, other clubs have a hard time beyond historic. And so that's in a way my guiding light about this. And I think it would be helpful maybe if we all, I don't say we all have to agree, but what really is the goal in this? I think that's important to look at. And I'm also gonna note that all of us are great committed individuals. I just hope somewhere through this process, we get a little more feedback, even through the activities council or some other kind of a group that is representing the actual people who are in these rooms. And not to say that we couldn't make good decisions, and this is a public meeting, people can come, but I would just like to somehow add some level in this process of getting some feedback from our major customers, the clubs, on these issues.
And is your goal incorporating room availability for residents? Is that your main goal?
For members.
For clubs, right now, we're just talking
I
about.
think well, you know, I mean, I would say clubs. I mean, I don't mean to, not that residents aren't important, but I mean, clubs are one of the fabrics of how we bring our community together. And residents, individuals, always have the option of using other opportunities. I mean, the rates we have here are astounding. So no, I guess I would say personally, it's more about clubs, not that I couldn't extend that to residents.
Well, if you take the time to read through all these.
Yeah.
Like I said, the intent of the ones that are in place was to protect the use of the amenities to the people who live, the clubs here in Rossmore. But they've changed over time, and clubs' practices have changed over time. So we need to make sure the policies go back to protecting, or at least the discussion, protecting those rights of the clubs here in Rossmore to have the access. Anything else, Ann?
I just want to ask, okay, so we gotta eat this elephant one bite at a time. So next month, do you want to start with whatever metrics we do have?
Yes.
So you can look at the use of non-residents and even by different, you know, types of, not types of clubs, but like the different clubs. You'll see it pretty much detailed out. Okay. And then,
And I have one question, if you could be prepared to answer it the next time. When the roster comes in and it includes the address, is there any checking that that information is currently valid?
by staff, I can tell you right now, by staff, it is not.
Okay, that's,
We don't have the bandwidth for that.
okay,
We look and see how many members versus non-residents,
okay.
like residents
But you
versus
take what's
non-residents.
on the form as correct.
And I've said before, the club did become very crafty.
This is
They're very correct.
I know.
And I just want to say, I agree with Susan, that we should consider the clubs, but in order to consider the clubs, we got to fix all of this first. And then when it's all done, then we can see about that other piece of where the clubs and the resident things fixed, you know, can work. Because if we can't fix this stuff behind here, it makes that whole thing of trying to take care of the clubs worse, because we got all this stuff happening down here. So I think we need to fix this first, and then the other piece will fall in really easy. And I think that'll be an easy piece to do, but we got to come back to this.
Any other comments or?
Great start, and I love this spread, I love this sheet, the way you broke it down here, this is very good.
Excellent.
And as you have more burning questions, we can add to it, because I think it'll be good to track. It's kind of, it would be nice to have a visual to track what we're doing with this, so if people come into the conversation 2 meetings from now. But it will take a few months to get through this, so.
Are you planning to
Haven't
have
seen me for a while.
red line policies next time, or just the metrics, or how do you proceed? How do you think you're gonna proceed?
So I really think that the red line happens after your discussion. Like, it's really for, we don't want to make recommendations. We just want to present the information and have you respond, and then we can red line and bring it back. Like, you know, you may say something like, oh, can you find a policy from someplace that you can give us as a baseline for like the new policy or something like that. But other than that, like, we really want to do it kind of directed by the committee.
Here's a point of data, and I don't know that you collect this. So some of the clubs who have events where a lot of folks that don't live in Rossmore come in many of those circumstances, the people who are coming in here are paying to come in. And I'm not saying we're getting that money, but they're paying for a concert, or they're paying for some special event that without those outsiders paying, the event might not be available to our residents. Versus a situation where a group of club has an event and just a whole bunch of people from the outside are coming in and taking up space, pardon that crude analogy. So, but you don't, I don't think you collect information in terms of, or maybe you do on those forms, doesn't it say there's a fee for this event? Do you collect that information? When you do a reservation, don't you have to say, are you gonna charge a ticket for this event?
Yeah, we do that. We do that. We're more, for that question, that has helped us more with private residents that come in, because it really should be for their own use. And we've had some issues. Again, residents are coming in, they're booking a room for somebody's nonprofit to do a big fundraiser. And we just had one that was either bringing equipment, that kind of, our rooms were built in a way that they're multi-purpose, but they can't be anything goes. And there's certain equipment that outside vendors bring in that will harm our floors, that kind of stuff. And so we had to tell that resident, I guess they've done it a couple of years, like they won't be able to do that anymore.
Susan brings up a really good point. Can you also have the application in the packet so that we can, those of us who don't make reservations
Yes.
will know what's
Yes.
on the application?
Oh, that's a
That'd be
good idea.
great, very good.
Okay.
The other thing I think would be very interesting for us as we go through this is when you speak of the roster per club, can we know how many residents are up and the 20%, what the size of the clubs is?
No, we have that.
Okay,
We have the actual number,
okay, that's great.
the percentage, and in many, not all
And the-
cases, the gate
The
list.
total membership in that club.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because you'll see what they put as their membership, but then you'll see what their standing regular gate list is, and you'll see how that percentage flips. It's very funny.
And then in the policies, they talk about certain organizations within Rossmore, like the athletic facilities and things like that, do not allow non-residents. As far as you know at this point, is that carried through?
Yeah, actually, certainly, so the fitness center is is an example of something which, and we have to tell people all the time, that's not under room reservations. It's preserved, it's a very reduced, curated group of users in there. That's something that we'd like to look at maybe next year and bring it to the Fitness and Aquatic Advisory Committee, because we get a lot of requests on it, but also we're concerned about some of the users coming in and the training of the people leading things, which are quasi-fitness and athletics. So in a facility like that, it's a little problematic, potentially problematic.
But like tennis and ceramics, I mean, in the policy as it stands now, it says that they're not permitted to have non-residents.
It does say that.
Is that true?
That's pretty well adhered to. I mean, in the conversations I've had with most of them, what they'll do is they end up, like tennis won't have members, but they invite people to play. So again, it's that, it's very easy to submit your roster as 100% resident, but have only 50% at any one activity. It's very common. The biggest, one of the places that we have one of the biggest issues is at the table tennis facility.
Is what?
The table tennis facility.
Oh,
But again, we don't have to monitor those types of unstaffed kind of club coordinated facilities is pretty difficult.
How many facilities, other than the fitness center, use the fobs for entrance?
Just them.
Only
It's
the
just-
fitness center.
Yeah, it's just fitness center.
But that's coming, right? I hope.
At some point.
At some point, and when that was first done, that was going to be a way to check into events, to check in all the places you're gonna be able to, wherever you went, you just used your
That
fob.
would help a lot.
We're not there yet.
Yeah, okay, well, that's what I thought, I just wanted to make
Yeah.
sure.
I mean, that would be a really nice way to control access for members.
Next budget cycle.
Yeah. I know Tom's been chomping at the bit. It's money, it's money.
Any other questions or comments? Then basically, the next meeting is February 9, 2026. We'll appreciate the data that you'll be able to bring for that, and we are now adjourned.